On behalf of the Standing Committee, thank you for being here. Thank you for your attendance. Thank you for your participation in convention. I have been advised that there's been an awful wreck on JTB and that some folks who are trying to get here have been postponed or delayed. So we may have some friends come in a little bit later, and I just ask you to welcome them and make space for them as they come in. So let's go to, Hani is exactly where I would want her to be, on screen 3. And again, in case you didn't hear earlier, if you would like to either take this with you and or watch it on your own phone now, there are QR codes on the back tables that will take you directly to it, and you'll have your own copy to use. There also will be some embedded internal QR codes during the resolutions presentation that will take you to the documents that that group is presenting. So what are we doing tonight? The canons require us to have pre-convention meetings, and what we're doing tonight is we're complying with that requirement, and these are the things that we're going to be doing. We're going to go quickly over the annual convention agenda as it exists right now. We're going to review the nominations. Bob is going to give us a financial summary. Father Wiley and Rick are going to come up and give us a presentation on the resolutions, and then we're going to have another opportunity for Q&A, and we're going to adjourn. Just to make sure that doesn't dissuade you, the fact that there is Q&A at the end of the evening doesn't mean that you shouldn't interrupt. The best way to get the information to all of you is for us to do it contemporaneously, good lawyer word, with the material that we're presenting. So if I'm identifying a nominee and you don't understand who that nominee is, please raise your hand. If Father Wiley and Rick are talking about an issue during the resolution summary, please feel free to raise your hand and make sure that you understand or interject your question or your comment. And as Bob is doing financials, same thing. So, jumping right on into the agenda. Honey, if we could go to screen 5. So we will open the agenda. We will convene the convention at 10 a.m. on Friday, September 11th. We really ask that you are there and checked in because you're all already registered, aren't you? Because today is the deadline for registration. Tomorrow-ish. It's sunset. It's today. Anyway, thank y'all. It is tomorrow. I'm already in Gainesville. Funny, you people look like you're in Jacksonville. Anyway, we're doing pre-convention in Gainesville tomorrow night. So anyway, please arrive. We will open check-in at 8:30. There will be a continental breakfast available to you. Please come on, get there, greet your friends, hug your necks, kiss your babies, etc. Get to your seats as soon as you can so that we can open on time at 10 a.m. because we do have a good bit of business to do. The convention will be called to order first, or will be first involved in morning worship. It will be led by two of our assisting bishops, Bishop Holcomb and Bishop Scharf. And then we will proceed for the opening items of every convention. The credentials report, all of the mechanisms that put us in action, that convene us, that call our meeting into order. And then we'll take up our first item of business. And surprise, it's the election of our 9th bishop. I knew none of you knew that, right? And the first ballot will be taken as soon as possible after we've convened ourselves. And balloting will continue with a prayer before each ballot. Now, last night when we met in pre-convention in Tallahassee, I talked just a minute about what that looks like. Some of you are old hands. You've been through elections of bishops. You understand how it works. But for those of us who are new to it, I want to just kind of talk about what happens so that you don't feel like, why is this taking so long? It is a deliberate process. It is not a hurried process. So the ballots will be open. Father Justin is chair of the meeting. We'll open the balloting. All the delegates, clergy and lay, will vote. Again, remember this year we're using a slightly different electronic voting vendor, and the reason we're using a different one is to assure that our Zoom participants and our in-person participants are on the same platform, so that we don't have to use Zoom polling to take the votes of those participating by Zoom, because that was awkward and it arguably wasn't as close to true secret balloting as our canons require. So everybody, whether they're on Zoom or in person, will be using a vendor called Election Buddy. And if you've been reading your announcements like good little delegates, you know that you need to have, if you're in the room, you need to have a fully charged, you're coming to Camp Weed with a well-charged iPhone or tablet, right? Yes, you are. Thank you. We will have, in the case of emergency, we will have a few electric charging stations, but please charge that rascal before you come into the meeting, okay? Anyway, you will be voting on your own device, not on a device like we did with Paget. Paget was a wonderful vendor and did a great job for us, but this time, so that we have, again, our in-person and our Zoom participants on the same voting platform, we're using a vendor that can accommodate that. Okay, so please come, well-charged equipment. Make sure all your device information is in the registration that you will complete by tomorrow. Sorry, I thought it was already the 27th. Anyway, does that tell you how my week's going? Anyway, so when Father Justin opens the vote, you will select the nominee for whom you wish to vote. You will use your device to enter that vote. There will be plenty of time given for the entry. We will have lessons. Remember, there are actually 3 training sessions online, which was in your reminder of today. If you didn't see your reminder of today, go back and look for it in your email. Look in your email spam filter. Look wherever you find it. Or if you don't find it, contact us at the diocesan office and let us re-forward it to you, because it's really important that between now and convention, over the next week or so, that you participate in Election Buddy training, okay? So anyway, you will have entered your vote. A nice long time will be given for the entry of that vote, and then Father Justin will announce the closing of the balloting, okay? Now, unlike what you saw previously when we were voting for internal candidates for diocesan council or any other internal office, you will not see the results displayed immediately. Okay, let me say that again. You will not see the results immediately, because the process is, in a bishop election, and used across the country, that the bishop nominees are the first to learn the results. So our transition chair, Carolyn Goslin, from Tallahassee, who many of you may have met over the last week as they've been doing meet and greets, and did a wonderful job of it, will be the person that Father Justin receives the results. Father Justin gives them to Carolyn. Carolyn communicates them to the 3 nominees. At that time, if a bishop has not been elected, the 3 nominees each has the chance to either go forward in the election or not go forward in the election. And they will likely communicate that orally to Carolyn, but we require that they also communicate it in writing. So, vote comes in, Justin, Carolyn, 3 nominees, right? 3 nominees electronically back to Justin, so that you can hear that is not a fast process. So I ask your patience, we ask your patience as that occurs. As soon as Father Justin has received the response from the 3 nominees, he will then direct that election buddy working with our AV consultant display the results. So that's when you as a delegate will see the results, okay? So again, every time we take a vote, that's what's going to happen. Now, it's at one of those votes, ultimately, a bishop will be elected. Please, Lord. And not that I'm tired, I'm really not. But at that point, obviously, the communication to the elected nominee will be, do you accept? And again, all 3 of them have to answer. Because if for some reason nominee number whatever decides, I've discerned that this really isn't right, and I'm withdrawing. That could happen. That's in the range of all the wonderful possibilities in the world. So again, that communication, either acceptance or withdrawal, will come back to Father Justin, and then you will see the election buddy results. And great celebration will be had because, Lord willing, the elected nominee will be accepting. So, okay, so we're in the part of the day, and let's say, because my mother raised an optimist, let's say we're before lunch, okay? Let's say it's a very early election. What we will do is take a pause, breathe, deal with where we are and what has happened. And then, if we're close enough, we will probably go straight to lunch. But one thing that has to happen under our rules of order is that the prayer for mission and ministry has to be prayed at noon. Just as the scriptures have to be displayed in our meetings, that's another interesting and wonderful rule of the Florida Diocese, that every noon, or as close to noon as possible, we pray for mission and ministry. We also will be incorporating that into noonday prayer, as you probably see behind me. So midday, election or no election yet, we will break, noonday prayer, prayer for mission and ministry, and lunch. Now, all the clergy in the room who came to meet and greet last week at Camp Weed will tell you that the food was delicious. And one of the reasons it was is because we had a wonderful caterer come in named Laura. Great name. And Laura is also our caterer for your lunch. So it will be delicious. So be prepared that in the middle of the day, you'll pray, you'll worship, you'll have a delicious lunch. Now, if we haven't elected, the electing process will continue after lunch. If we complete the electing process, let's say in the middle of the afternoon on Friday, what we will do is again pause, take a moment, spend the moment with the fact that we have a bishop, or a bishop-elect at that point. And then we will move directly into annual convention business. And the reason for that is we want to use your time effectively. You've committed to come and be with us on Friday and Saturday, and we want to use your time well, respect your time, and get you home as soon as we can. So Father Justin will, and that's one interesting thing about the whole agenda that I should mention, is that the agenda is presented, but it's subject to the direction of the chair. So Father Justin can tweak and move. There are things under our rules of order, like the prayer for mission and ministry, that he can't really tweak because it's in the rules. But basically, he can adjust and on the spot for the health and movement of the meeting. Okay? So let's say that we do elect, we get on into annual convention business. Regardless of where we are, whether we're still in elections or whether we've moved on to annual convention business, we will pause in the late afternoon, plus or minus probably 5 o'clock. And we will then take a pause again and allow for the altar to be moved into the space, and we will celebrate Holy Eucharist together. So then we will have another delicious meal that Laura is also preparing. So again, I hope you've chosen to have dinner with us because I'm sure it will be delicious. Honey, if you'll go to the next screen. After dinner, you're on your own. It's the evening for you. And then the next morning, again, you're going to be there bright and early to check back in. And we're going to start with morning worship slightly earlier on Saturday, again, to use your time well and get you home as soon as we can. Convention will resume. If we have not yet elected, we'll proceed back into election. It's only after the election, as the first item of business is completed, that we will move to the annual convention business. Again, under our rules, we will pause at midday for noonday prayer and prayer for mission and ministry. We'll have a box lunch this time, in case you're going to be getting in your cars soon, which we hope. And then we will resume after lunch as needed for the convention and the remaining business, and then ultimately the closing prayer and adjournment. Now, I hope I explained that as we went along, but I'm going to pause and see if anybody has any questions about the agenda. Jackie. You got it?
I sometimes have trouble at Camp Weed getting reception on my cell phone, and I know others do too. Are we going to have a Wi-Fi booster or something?
We have Wi-Fi extraordinaire. We working with our IT consultant that serves the diocese, we have massively upgraded Wi-Fi for this event. Our consultants are confident that we have Wi-Fi to spare. But just one real quick point, you will, by the way, be on Wi-Fi, not on your cellular. So if you, like many of us, I actually changed cellular providers when I came into this position because I knew I'd be at Camp Weed a lot. And I knew that my AT&T was lousy at camp. If you're on AT&T or a carrier that doesn't get good coverage, that's not a problem because you will be on Wi-Fi, not on your cellular coverage. But thank you for that question, Jackie. Yes, ma'am. Hania will work with you on that. The issue is that, and this is a quick summary, and Laura's here and can back me up on this. Is Annette or Pam here? I just want to recognize the whole committee. Our credentials committee is ACES, and they know the canons and the structure and have worked with us very closely. The quick summary, proof me on this, Laura, is that if you have an elected alternate, the alternate can move into the position, actually does kind of automatically move into the position. We ask for a form just for documentation purposes. We don't even really have to do that, but we want to be extra careful. If you don't have another person who's been elected by a meeting of your congregation, technically you could have a meeting between now and then. It's kind of hard to imagine that in the number of days that we have left that you could, but our parliamentarian has always taken the position, I'll drop the always, has taken the position that we need to provide the vote to a duly elected person if possible.
Oh, okay, we
that
do.
All makes sense?
Yes, it
Laura,
does.
Hold
on.
I did okay. I got a nod from Laura.
Okay, so let me make sure I understand this correctly. Our original delegate, she went ahead and she registered. So our alternate delegate could take her place, and all we need is a form?
If the ultimate delegate, I'm using your
Yes.
description there, is an already elected alternate.
She is.
Perfect. Then just work with Hania. We'll get that person in the list. Get
Okay.
It all, so the credentials has it in advance. Because what we don't want to do, and this is true for everybody, and please spread this word throughout convention, if there are any tweaks, which we expect, of course, every year, please get the information to us as soon as possible so we can pre-advise credentials so that they have less work to do that morning. because one of the things that they do, one of the principal things that they do, is to ride alongside us. Everybody know that good word, paraclete? Anyway, ride alongside us and watch with us to make sure that everything's according to Hoyle, to use an old expression. So please let us know sooner rather than later. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Basis or a 2/3 of quorum or how? Hello.
The bishop is elected according to our articles. Every corporation is created in Florida by what are called articles. Our articles provide that in each order, the bishop is elected by majority. So it's a majority in clergy and a majority in lay. Yes. Although we're not doing any, solemnaic people and dividing any humans. We're going to roll over to a whole human. Any other quick questions? Or not quick questions? Yes, sir. Hang on, Keith.
Will this work on an Android phone? Does it have to be an iPhone?
No, I understand.
I'm sorry? To my understanding, yes. I don't think there's any prejudices to maker. It's really just about, can you receive and send emails and texts? And you can on an Android, of course. The reason we're trying to be so careful about the microphone is because this is being recorded to be shared, and we're just trying to make sure that our brothers and sisters in the diocese who don't have an opportunity to go to one of these pre-conventions can actually hear your questions. So it's not that we can't hear you, it's that we want to make sure they can hear you. Yes, sir.
I believe you've already answered this, but we'll have a parliamentarian again this year like we did last year. Okay, that was very helpful. Thank you.
Our three-piece suit friend is there once again. And we love him and appreciate him, and he gives us great advice and support. Anybody else? Okay. Let's move on from to the nominations. And I want to first of all recognize Mother Laura McGevney, who's done a wonderful job of leading the nominations process this year. Again, I promise, not a third. When I will go to the bishop next year and say, not Laura, she's done her time, more than amply. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is just walk through what the various offices are that are being elected and what the terms are. And then when we get to the Swanee Board of Trustees, I'm going to describe a slight anomaly for you this year, just because we're trying to work closely with Swanee. Okay, the nominations overview. Here are the offices we're electing. In Diocesan Council, we are only electing, because of the way the rotations work, we're only electing one member this year, and that will be a lay member for First Coast East, who will serve a 3-year term. Then on Disciplinary Board, we're electing 4 members, 2 clergy and 2 lay, each for 3-year terms. On Standing Committee, as we do every year, we're going to be electing a new member of the clergy and a new member from the laity, each for a 3-year term. And then on the Swanee Board of Trustees, we're electing a member of the clergy for a 3-year term. Now, the thing I want you to be aware of is that normally it is the case in our diocese that the moment a person is elected, as soon as the meeting of election concludes, they're elected. They are in the office. There's no waiting period. However, when we did not have a January convention in 2023 and moved to fall conventions, we got off cycle with Sewanee, which really has been problematic, more for them than for us, but it has been really problematic. So as a courtesy to Sewanee, the person who is elected on the 11th or 12th will not be seated immediately. The person will be elected, but not yet seated. And the clergy person will be seated the following fall to fall into Sewanee's cycle. So our coterie of existing Swanee trustees have all agreed to be extended following that rule. And so what will happen is that the Swanee trustee, clergy trustee elected this year, again, will go into office for Swanee at next fall. Again, it has been very difficult for them that we went to fall conventions because our elections were so close, or actually after their terms began, and so they asked us to come in sync with them. So again, this year, the Swanee clergy trustee will be elected and take office, I believe, in September of 2027. Does that everybody follow all that? Okay. So what we're going to do is Hania is going to go to the screen where you see faces. Because for me, when I hear names, I'm always like, yeah, well, who is that? So Hania, if you'll go to 13, I'm now going to talk to you about the 3 Diocesan Council nominees, again, for a 3-year term from First Coast East. They are Kathleen McLean from St. Peter's, Fernandina Beach, John Cooksey from Church of Our Savior in Jacksonville, and Laura Ammons from Redeemer in Jacksonville. So those are the 3 nominees for the 1 3-year position on Diocesan Council. Okay, then we're going to go to the disciplinary board. Hania, would you go to slide 17? There are 3 nominees for the clergy positions. We will elect 2. So 3 nominees, 2 will be elected. They are, on the clergy order, the Reverend Catherine Montgomery from St. Mary's Church and Mission, the Reverend Sarah Minton from St. Peter's, Fernandina Beach, and the Reverend Andres Diaz-Dorta from Christ Episcopal Church, Ponte Vedra Beach. Again, 2 of those 3 will be elected. Then in the lay order, Hania, would you go to 19, please? We will again be electing 2 from 3 nominees for a 3-year term each. They are Matthew Wolf from Episcopal Church of the Good Shepherd here in Jacksonville, Dave Spalding from St. Cyprian's, St. Augustine, and Ernest Driscoll from St. Paul's Federal Point. And those gentlemen are respectively from First Coast West, and then the latter 2 from the River region. Any questions about any of those nominees so far? Great. Then we are going to the standing committee. And Hania, if you'll go to slide 24. Again, we're electing 2 members of the standing committee, 1 in the lay order and 1 in the clergy order. Starting with the clergy order, the nominees for 1 position, a 3-year term, are the Reverend William Stokes from St. James Episcopal in Lake City and the Reverend Tom Reeder from Christ Episcopal in Ponte Vedra Beach. And then, Hania, if you'll go to slide 26. Now, we have just a wealth of nominees this year on for the standing committee lay position. Again, we have 9 nominees, and we will elect 1. So what that tells us is that it is very likely that there will be 1 or more runoffs in that election. It is possible, of course, that one could have a clear majority, but it is very possible that we will have multiple runoffs. Just for you to remember our rules on election, which may be adjusted at the meeting, but our standard rule of order is that if a person, a nominee, a candidate, has 25%, they continue to, or more, they continue to the runoff. If they don't, they're dropped for the runoff. So that's how we'll know how each runoff will be determined, is based on the number. The person must be elected by a majority. All of that makes sense to you? Any questions about any of that? Great. So, our final election is for the Swanee Board of Trustees, as I mentioned. Hania, would you go to slide 30, please? And there are 3 clergy nominees for the 1 clergy position that will be a 3-year term, will be elected now at this meeting, but will not take office for almost a full year. Because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that the Swanee rules, the Swanee Board rules, are that they take office September 1st. So those three nominees are the Reverend Roy Tuff from Holy Trinity, Gainesville in the Santa Fe region, the Reverend Vic Haley from St. Paul's by the Sea in Jacksonville Beach, and the Reverend Christopher Dell from Episcopal Church of the Good Shepherd, First Coast West. So again, those three folks are standing for election for that one position. Okay, so that is all of the nominations. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, sir. Can you get them? Thank you for your patience in the microphone.
Does the term begin when they are officially seated, not
Yes.
when they're elected? So
Correct.
it'll be 4 years from when we elect them. Then.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Correct. And we'll keep on that path unless and until we adjust the time of the convention. Obviously, our leadership may determine we can't, under our canons, we can't, I love double negatives, we can't not have a convention. We're required to meet annually. So it's unlikely that our leadership, but possible that our leadership might take us from a fall convention or a late summer convention to an immediate early year, like winter convention again. If we go back to a winter convention, we won't have to have that time lag again. Because again, the only reason we're doing this for Swanee is to honor their times tables. There's no reason we would do it otherwise. Matter of fact, I've argued with them that they could seat somebody immediately, and that just didn't play on the mountain at all. So, with that, I'm going to turn the meeting over to our beloved treasurer. Do you want one of these, or do you want a handheld? Whatever works best. Okay, well, I'm going to give you that handheld. Or this one. I'm sorry. Here, I have this one here, Bob. And you're welcome to use this book if you want to flip. Yeah. Okay, whatever's easiest for you, boss.
Thank you.
You got it?
Yes.
Make sure it's on.
No. It is. Hey. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Bob White. Whether you know it or not, I've been your treasurer for the Diocese of Florida since February of 2024. So, right at about 2.5 years. And I am not the famous Bob White in this diocese, if you know him. He's from St. Peter's, Fernandina Beach. And I met Bob about 5 years ago when my rector, Joe Gibbs, about a day or two before a convention, said somebody took sick, one of our delegates, and could you stand in? I said, sure, I'd be happy to. So I drove to Camp Weed, and I checked in, and they gave me a name tag, and I was pretty impressed. Like, they've only known I was coming one day. And so I put the name tag on and went in the convention. We had a church service, and when we passed the peace, there was this fellow behind me, and he had this raggedy-looking tag on it that said Bob White. And I looked down at my tag, and it said, Bob White, Fernandina Beach. So I gave him his tag, and we had a good time with that and ended up talking for about 10 minutes at the break, and it was fantastic. So I'm the other Bob White, hopefully a lot less recognizable. So I'm here to talk about the financial summary for the diocese. I know everybody's been talking about the bishop election and nominations and all that stuff, but I know why you're really here. It's to hear the finances. So here we go. And by the way, it was interesting to hear about the age of the diocese when we first started. Our little hamlet on the Mandarin Road was actually founded in 1880 by a woman that you've probably heard of, Harriet Beecher Stowe, and her husband, Professor Calvin Stowe. So we've been around a bit and still kicking. So let's talk about 2025 financials, because when we had the convention last year, it was in September, so we didn't have 2025. And before I get started, a financial nerd like me wants you to point out to you that anytime you see a red number, it's not a good thing. whether that be at the operating bottom line or whether that be in a variance or whatever it might be. Similar to last year, I'm presenting this in what I call operating and non-operating. And what does that mean? Well, operating revenue is what we receive from our churches and parishes and some limited money from program initiatives and things like that. And that's our basic revenue. And then we have our operating expenses, and you can see on this particular slide that we actually lost $600,000 on the operating bottom line. But we had non-operating revenue, primarily in the form of endowment support and things such as that, which brought us to a surplus at the end of the year of $75,000 against a budgeted surplus of $17,000. And I'll talk a little bit more about these non-operating revenue assistance or subsidies or whatever you want to call them. So that's how we ended up in 2025. So if we go on to where we are through 2026, and this is through July 31st, we are actually, and again, the same breakout between operating revenue and non-operating revenue. We are about $500,000 behind on operating bottom line. We've taken in $165,000 from non-operating revenue, again from the endowment. And our bottom line through July is a deficit of $365 against a budgeted deficit of $295, which is a loss, obviously, or a deficit, but it's more than we budgeted. Well, we got 5 months to go. And I know a good piece of that deficit is that Camp Weed had requested, and the conference had requested $200,000 in the 26 budget. The Budget Committee actually approved $180,000, and that's already been paid, even though it wasn't scheduled to be paid. It was scheduled to be paid later, part of it later. So that's about $90,000 that is explaining most of that variance. So it's kind of going according to plan, especially on the revenue side, but we still have work to do. I also want to point out that the Budget Committee and subsequently the Diocesan Council approved a budget of $140,000 deficit for 2026. And that all has to do with the bishop search. It's not free. There's a lot of cost in the executive, the search team, and so on and so forth. So we decided that let's just budget a deficit and see if we can make it up throughout the year. And evidently, thus far, we're not. But again, we're not done yet. So we shall see about that. So let's move on to our investments. And this is interesting because we have a couple of categories that the diocese controls, which is the endowment and the Nehemiah Fund. The endowment is just what it says, it's an endowment. The Nehemiah Fund is all of our property-related real estate funds. Until about a year or two ago, some of the Nehemiah funds were occasionally used for operating purposes to help when we had problems. And the Finance Committee and subsequently the Diocesan Council agreed that we're not going to ever use the Nehemiah Fund for anything other than real estate and property, particularly loans to churches who have perhaps exhausted their efforts to find their own internal funding for something that needs to be done. And so we've done quite a bit of lending to churches. And that's really a good thing because, as I think all of you probably know, the diocese actually owns all the assets. Property, buildings, chairs, computers, just the way it works. And so when we make a loan to a church, we're actually investing in our own property, collective property, the church's property, the diocese property. So that's kind of how the Nehemiah Fund works. So the purpose of this slide is just to kind of show you how we've done in the last 3 years from 24 to 26. It's probably best to look at the far right columns where we show that we've actually gone up about 1.6% since 24. Now, any of us who invest money would say a 1.6 return kind of pretty bad, and we'll get to that in a minute. But we also show another line in here, which is the former foundation. We'll get to that in a minute. But in December of 25, the foundation dissolved, and so that money came to the diocese. And again, we'll talk about that shortly. The takeaway I want to mention here, as it relates to investment balances, is that if you take away the foundation money we received, we've dropped about 5.6 in the last 3 years %. Again, that's even worse than 1.6. But it's important to recognize that the endowment has supported the diocese operations to the tune of about $835,000 through that 3-year period. Furthermore, the Nehemiah Fund, also controlled by the diocese, has provided $700,000 in support, mainly to member churches in the form of loans. So it's important to understand that, yeah, we've dropped a little bit, but we've also invested quite a bit in not only the operations of the diocese, but also in the churches that need help with construction and so on and so forth. As it relates to the overall returns, you can see on the far right that we've averaged about 11% in that 3-year time period. What's that? Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah. Everybody get that okay? Let's just move on a little bit. Let's talk about diocesan debt. We don't have debt necessarily, but certain churches do, and because we own all the property of all the churches, we are what is known as a guarantor. If you ever had a kid who got a car loan and you had to go in and sign a piece of paper, you were essentially co-signing or becoming a guarantor of that loan in case your kid decided, yeah, I don't want to pay that back. It's similar here. So we have about $7-ish million of outstanding debt that we've guaranteed, and these numbers might need to be fine-tuned just a little bit. They might be a little lower. The terms are, 3 years or less. The debt is being serviced by the churches that have that debt. We're just there in case they don't, and nobody expects that to happen. Furthermore, in 2026, we had a balloon note due for Grace Orange Park. I think the final number was about $38,000. That's been paid off, so that debt is gone. The diocese agreed to do that some time ago. So the next thing I want to talk about, which is kind of important because there's a lot of rumors out here when this happened, I call it the story of the foundation. Everybody knows we had a foundation. It was a separate corporation. It had a separate independent board. To say that it wasn't closely aligned with the diocese would be kind of naive, but it was still a separate business. In December, for their own reasons, they decided to dissolve the foundation. It was about $2.6 million in change of assets, and that's a key distinction that I'll talk about shortly. The foundation board asked, we didn't have to do it, and the diocesan council agreed to do it, to allocate that $2.6 million according to this slide. $1.65 million for immediate needed repairs at the Camp and Conference Center. As I understand it, that's primarily roofing and HVAC and some other things. There was also $500,000 set aside for operational reserves. They also asked, and the diocesan council agreed, that $200,000 be given to Trinity to pay off debt for their Trinity North project. And then finally, $300,000 was asked to be set aside for our college ministries with no algorithm or formula as to how that would happen. But nonetheless, we agreed to do it. The thing I want to point out that the diocesan council, I think they now understand it, is that we didn't get $2.65 million of cash that we could do whatever we wanted to. We also got promises that came along with that, which are known as designated and restricted funds, which are technically liabilities. Somebody says, I'm going to give $500,000 to the foundation, and they say, but I want it for the Camp and Conference Center. Well, the people who are responsible for spending that money kind of need to spend it on the Camp and Conference Center, or perhaps youth scholarships, or perhaps other ministries. There's a host of them. And so that still needs to be worked on, and we'll get into that shortly. The story of the foundation continued. Are you with me? Okay, good. And these are as of June 30th, so I guarantee you these numbers have changed and they'll be updated for the convention. $1.3 million was spent already on Camp Weed, again in the form primarily of roofing and HVAC and a few other projects that were sorely needed because things were falling apart. The $500,000 in operating reserves, $250 of that's already been provided. As far as the Trinity North assistance that the board asked for and the diocesan council agreed to, That money has already been given to Trinity. And the $300,000 that was asked to be allocated to college ministries is still being noodled on, I'd say. We're still figuring that out. But it's going to happen. So the good news is that the college ministries are going to get a windfall. Maybe the bad news, not necessarily, is that could impact the budget for them in 2027. Finally, the finance team, which includes myself, Nella Castiov, the controller of the diocese, and a few other folks, we have to reconcile these designated and restricted accounts. The good news is a substantial amount of those funds had been designated for things like Camp Wheaton Conference Center, general diocesan support, things that we can say, okay, then that makes the fact that we gave 1.6 million to Camp Weed, it works. And so we have to sort that out. We haven't done that yet because it happened in late 25, and we haven't done the 2025 audit yet, so we will be getting to that soon. Some other things I want to talk about. We just, literally, I think today, received a clean 2024 audit for the diocese. I'm glad you clapped because that's so huge. Because I know when I started, well, let's put it this way. At the November 23 convention at Episcopal High School, the last audit we had completed was 2018. So we were behind about 5 years. So we have completed 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and as of today, 24. So we've done 6 audits in about 30 operating months. Now, if you've ever done an audit, bless you. If you've ever been audited, bless you more. But I will tell you that for a finance professional, that is astounding that happened. But I do want to say it came at some expense because we asked the accounting firm and the audit firm to put a high priority on this and to go faster than they normally would. And so that costs money, and it costs resources, and it costs us energy and resources with respect to doing other things that need to be done. But I will say that we're catching up, and by virtue of the fact that 2024 is done, we're really only about 6 months behind now, because typically you'd expect the previous year's audit to be done, say, late spring, sometime in the summer. So no rest for the weary. We will be getting after 2025, very quickly. Next thing, we've started the 2027 budget process. It's so much fun. And things have been sent to the ministries we support, justification, documentation, this sort of thing. We have to be cognizant that when we give people support, no matter what the ministry is, it's not an annuity. It's not here, you get 65 grand every year. We want you to become self-sustaining, so explain to us, how that's going. What are you doing? How are you making progress so that the 65 can become 45 and then 35 and hopefully one day 0? So we're on that process already. The other thing is that the Finance and Investments Committee, chaired by Matt Green, and if anybody's interested, I have all the members of that and the Budget Committee. We finally have, if we're not done, we got like a half a box to check with an investment policy that guides our management of our investment firm because it's important for internal resources to be on top of that and not just trust whoever we hire to do whatever they do. So we're on to that. We've got a good committee, a lot of people who believe in healthy tension like I do, so we pay attention to that information very carefully. And then finally, in the last 6 or 7 months, as the treasurer of this diocese, I have reached out to they're not treasurers, they call them CFOs, in the Diocese of Southwest Florida and Central Florida, in the Bradenton area and Orlando, respectively. Same diocese that the bishops have been helping us with. And one of the things I found interesting was that they were astonished that we had separate budget committees and finance committees. And so we're looking into the possibility of combining those committees going forward, but that would require action at the convention, so that couldn't be done until next year. So that's the summary. That's what I had to share, and I'm happy to talk or answer any questions.
Thank you, Bob. Yay! It's real. It's real. We actually posted it on the diocesan website this afternoon and sent out a note to the diocese this afternoon. So if you're having trouble sleeping, you can click on the website and actually see the 2024 audit yourself. I do want to just embarrass him a moment and express the thanks of the diocese. I know I'm very grateful for him personally, but Bob does a wonderful job as treasurer. He asks the tough questions. He has a great and very ironic sense of humor, which is my favorite part. But I am, and we are so grateful to have such a committed treasurer, and he does a wonderful job. And for his sins, gets to also be treasurer at Church of Our Savior. So thank you, Bob. And now I'm going to turn it over to Vanna and Vanna's assistant, and you get to choose who's who. This is Rick Alexander and Father Wiley Ammons. Rick is the chair of the Convention Committee on Charter and Canons, and and Father Wiley is his evil twin. No, they've done amazing work, actually beginning very early in the cycle, and they'll tell you more about that. Would either of you like a clip microphone? You're good with the one? We can actually, you can have both of them. Are you good?
While Rick is getting his microphone on, I'll go ahead and begin our slide. First, thanks to Rick for chairing our committee and keeping all of the cats moving in the same direction. We, as Keith was just saying, we started early on because this has been a multi-year project of reviewing the Constitution, or the Charter and Canons. And we have said for a couple of years now that what we eventually needed to get to was wholesale revision. And so what you will see before you is a good swing at wholesale canonical revision, which is why you see the document being changed so substantially. And as the resolutions were posted, you'll know, if you've been looking at the convention materials, there is one master document that has multicolored designated changes. That's the master document from which we'll be working for all of these resolutions. So you'll hear me talking about green changes and blue changes and orange changes and red changes. And that refers to the color coding that's used on the master document that we'll get to on the next slide. But we wanted to open with, go back a slide, please, Hania. We wanted to open with why this, why now? And so, Rick, now that it sounds like you've been wired up.
Yeah, sounds like it. So one of the things, our brother Jim Salter, one of the things that we discovered in the last couple of years, and we were really called together in a time of crisis when we were having issues about quorum and things like that, as we looked at the entire document. And it's been chipped away at. It hasn't changed since 1990. And so there have been, amendments placed in throughout the whole thing, and it's all pockmarked and inconsistent. In addition to that, the national church has changed its documents, and we are out of compliance with them in numerous ways. So one of the things that we've tried to do is harmonize our document with the national church. And we wanted to go from stem to stern and look at everything and make it consistent, make it one breathable document, to take things that are out of place or for some reason in a period of time they seem like appropriate for a constitution, which really aren't. They're really more policy questions. So we've tried to trim it up, make it workable, and of course remove ambiguity, because ambiguity is the devil's playground. And if you're in a situation where there's distrust, ambiguity is the lightning rod. So we're trying to make it as clear as possible. And we've been working on, for example, cure for a couple of years. And we're still tinkering with that to try to make that. And that's one of the reasons we exist, is each time we get together, we discover new challenges like, well, what does that mean? So we try to clear it up.
And so in that work, another piece of what we heard through our process that we desire is transparency. and clarity. And so what we're doing along with the revisions and along with these pre-convention meetings is that the Charter and Canons Committee held a hearing on July 29th, Wednesday, July 29th on Zoom, where you were invited to read the proposed canonical changes and come online with us. We had a decent turnout. Canon nerds, of course, want everyone to come to talk about canonical revision. But the video of that hearing and the comments that were made for those hearings, like the bishop meet and greet answers, are available for you online on the Diocesan Convention website, so that you can already see some of the discussion that's going on around canonical revision. That hearing video has been posted. These videos will be posted. And our objective is, one, to let you know everything that we're proposing in advance. Two, to give you opportunities to comment on it to help shape the proposals that we'll be bringing to the convention floor, with the idea that we are not inviting the giant floor debates that people are always interested or agonizing about as we come up to conventions. We want to have it set all up front. We want to have the discussions ahead of time so that you understand it significantly before we reach the floor of the convention, so that we don't have the contentious floor debate. We have been revising these proposals as a result of what the feedback we've gotten at the hearings, and there'll be a couple of revisions we're going to talk about tonight from the feedback we got last night in Tallahassee. And so feedback that you give us tonight will also modify the resolutions that we're bringing to the convention, hopefully incorporating what we're hearing from you, so that the best possible product is what we're dealing with on the floor of convention, to make the business both more civil and briefer. You're welcome.
So part of the effort that we're using to try to make a massive document, changes to virtually every canon, virtually every section of every canon. We've got some changes. So we have gone and made these colors, and blue is the basically very simple grammatical type changes. Green, I'm sorry. Yeah. Blue is slight, potential, minor substantive changes that probably won't upset anybody. For example, you can see them here. Blue, we hereby establish the following 4 committees, because we changed that because we added a committee. So that's the kind of minor change we're talking about. Green is literally just changing words and saying, this is verbose, and let's get it out of there. It's just confusing people, right? Right. There's a lot of that.
These become thises when words get moved around or condensed to make it, for clarity. We're not changing the meaning of what's being said. We're just changing what's being said so that it reads more clearly. Those are green. When we're changing what's being said, but not in significant ways that change minor tweaks to the canons, those are in blue. And then we have other more.
And we have orange and red. Mm-hmm. So I'll start with the red first. Red is something that is a change in governance, a major change, something that definitely needs to be voted on and discussed, probably separately. We have a few that didn't raise any discussion, and so we are going to make that part of the package, because while they are changes and substantive changes, they don't seem to be generating a lot of angst. They seem to be like, yeah, we're good with that. And then the orange, why don't you tell them what the orange is?
Yeah, so the oranges are deletions and consolidations. So if something is being taken out of the canons but doesn't materially affect governance, or something's being relocated in the canons, you will find that in orange. And so you either have to go looking for it, which our report will tell you. If it's been removed from one section and consolidated into another section, the report, as you go through canon by canon in the report, will say, this has been moved to the new canon 19 and expanded. You'll hear me talk a little bit about that when we get to on the old canon 23 of lay readers. It's in orange because the canon of lay readers no longer exists under our proposal, but it's been moved under the Commission on Ministry and expanded into of lay licensure. So we have licenses for far more than a lay reader, and so that's been moved and expanded under the purview of the Commission on Ministry. That's an orange type change, right? It's something that's been removed from this section, sent somewhere else, and expanded in that particular instance, or something that's been removed and consolidated into other places, like the move in Canon 12 that puts the Common Ministry Budget Committee in Canon 12 under committees of the diocese instead of the old canon where it was
Or it had its own separate canon.
under diocesan council, right?
And we just found that unnecessary. It's just another
Another committee of the diocese.
committee of the diocese.
Right. So that's an orange change. These are all color-coded because if we showed you all of our changes in red, it would be one giant red document
Yeah.
that you would be wondering, what in the world is all of this? How do you expect me to understand it? This is how we hope that you might understand it better. And you will see the resolutions and proposals refer to them by color. So think of this as canonical revision happening in waves. And those waves are color-coded for you. So minor changes are green, more substantive changes, but not major changes are in blue. Major changes or changes to the governance of the diocese are in red, and then deletions and consolidations are in orange. So it's a little bit of subject and it's a little bit of function, the way that these are color-coded to try to make it more easy for you to understand. We're going to go through the resolutions in numerical order except for number 15.
Before we do, we're going to talk a little bit about our committee. We said this at the hearing, but I want to say it because some people might not have been there. We're diverse theologically. We're diverse geographically. We're diverse in the size of the parishes, from very small parishes to very large parishes. And we went through every single line in all the canons and then all the revisions to decide if we think this is, no one's going to argue with this. In fact, they might be bored by it. That's sort of the idea of the green. It's like, don't tell me about that, that's fine. All the way up to things that people will get exercised about. And so we have tried very hard to pick out those that are controversial and those that won't be, so we don't waste our time for two reasons. One is so we can get something passed. And the non-controversial things should pass, regardless of what you think of the more controversial things. And then we can vote on the more substantive things separate. And that way we can change and get a much more living, working document for our diocese.
So the first resolution there, our resolutions are numbered 1 through 15, so buckle in, it's going to be awesome. And those resolutions are typically numbered, not typically, they are numbered by color. So resolution number 1 is the omnibus resolution, which we'll explain to you in a second. Resolution number 2 is the green resolution, and the higher the number, the redder the color, if you want to look at it that way. The higher the number, the more substantial the change. So the non-controversial resolutions are all in the low numbers and single digits. All of the red resolutions are once you get to the higher numbers, and we'll cover them in order except for resolution number 15, which is a red resolution, but it has to be considered first, or we're proposing that it's considered first. This came out of the hearing process. Last year, when we took up the resolution concerning Zoom participation in convention, we took it up, we debated it, we voted on it, and it received a simple majority of the vote. And the convention floor went, yeah. And then the parliamentarian went, wait. In accordance with your canons, you need a 2/3 majority to have passed that. So you thought it passed, but it didn't. And so someone said, well, then why don't we make it simple majority? And this was proposed to the committee. The committee was willing to propose it to the convention with a couple of understandings. Is that one, y'all didn't know it took 2/3 majority to pass a canon, or at least the convention floor when the vote happened didn't. And if you want it that way, you can do it. This will require 2/3 for passage because canonical revisions requires 2/3. However, should you pass it every subsequent canon now only requires simple majority. And so this is something that people have proposed with the idea that it might make revision easier. This is something that you have to decide whether you want. This is the way that the General Convention does it. We have two documents that govern the Diocese of Florida, just like we have two major documents that govern the Episcopal Church. One is the Constitution. The Episcopal Church has a Constitution. To amend the Constitution requires a supermajority of votes and the reading of two subsequent diocesan conventions. That is true in the Diocese of Florida as well for our Articles of Reincorporation. We don't have a Constitution. We have the Articles of Reincorporation, which is an equivalent to our Constitution. And we also, the Florida, requires a 2/3 majority to change our canons. So if you're looking at Constitution and canons, this has a higher threshold for revision. This has a lower threshold for revision. The threshold for revision for the canons of the Episcopal Church is simple majority. And so someone proposed that we do that with our canons. We have proposed it. You have to vote 2/3 to make that happen. Subsequent to that vote,
So
then cannot
basically,
vote.
this is one of those examples where we're coming in line with what the national church is doing.
And by request. We got asked to do this. We said, you want to do it? You get to pass it. If you pass it, it makes the subsequent revisions easier. And that's why we have it up first, because that would apply to all of the subsequent revisions this year.
Do we have any questions yet
That's number 15.
about anything we've covered, not just that?
Yes. Microphone back there.
Mary Grace.
I probably should have asked this earlier, but are we going to have a color copy of these documents in our package, or do we have to look at them on our devices?
You can look at it on your devices, but if you ask me, I would suggest you print and bring a color copy of the documents. If we get into debate surrounding the canons, I would strongly recommend that you have a print copy of the colored documents with you, because you will have the colored copy that's up here. And our technologists are really great, and they're going to display the color copy on the screen when if we're discussing a particularly relevant portion of the canon. But as people who spend a lot of time in these documents, these discussions can touch multiple places of the canon simultaneously. And so I would recommend, if you're interested in this detail, print a color copy of the proposed canons and bring them with you to the convention. Keith, you're back in the back. Yes, and on the resolutions on the green resolution and on the blue resolution, there is a link to the live document. So when you go to those resolutions, there's a shortened link that will take you to the live documents for the proposed canons. So if revisions are made, if you click on that link, you have the current version right now. There's one master version that everyone has access to, and we've done that on purpose because we don't want to have to put revision numbers on the paper and have you try to figure out, well, when was this printed? You say you've made changes. There's one electronic document that's current right now all the time. I hope that helps. Yeah. Other questions? Yes, sir.
You mentioned that the documents are live documents. How late will it be until those documents are locked? I don't want to print 30-some pages to find out I need to print them again.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That's a great point. I can tell you that tonight I'm going to be talking about revisions that we had suggested last night in Tallahassee. We will, charter and canons, we typically meet on Thursdays.
Thursdays at 5.
We've been meeting every week for about 4 months running.
We've had a couple weeks off, so we're due to come back.
Right, so we will meet again after these pre-convention meetings, and there will be a cutoff that we will announce that this is the form that we'll be bringing the resolutions to the convention. Because we want to be able to revise it from your feedback from these meetings for what we bring to convention. So watch your convention announcements. We will say the Charter and Canons Committee has frozen the proposals, print now before you come to convention.
Any other questions? I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's fine. Julie?
Yes.
Does I know the committee has done a lot of work and understands this a lot more than most of the rest of us that are voting on these canons. Does the committee make a recommendation on some or all of the canons about which ones the committee recommends adoption, or are we to assume that all of the ones that are proposed by the committee are recommended by the committee for adoption?
Thank you for that question.
Great question.
And I dream of a day when the Charter and Canons Committee would present a resolution that did not originate with us and can say the committee does not recommend adoption. Because that would mean that y'all care enough about the contents of the Charter and Canons that you're proposing resolutions. All 15 of these resolutions have come from within the Charter and Canons Committee or as a result of our hearing. 15 is the new resolution that came as a result of the hearing. None of you have proposed revisions to the Charter and Canons, or if you have, it has been via email to the Charter and Canons Committee that the Charter and Canons Committee might propose that as a resolution. You actually don't need us to do that. You can propose revisions to the Charter and Canons. It takes your church and one other church to propose a resolution to change the documents of the diocese. In that case, what our committee does is we review it for consistency with the national church canons. We would then review it for consistency within our canons and either say, hey, you need to tweak it a little bit this way, or you need to change this and it'll be fine. And then after our review, then it would be proposed to the convention, and that is also at the point where the Charter and Canons Committee would say, this has been proposed, and we recommend passage, or we recommend that you vote no. That's when we would make a recommendation.
Let me answer that in a slightly different way. So I would say the omnibus resolution, which we're about to discuss, all the greens, all the blues, probably all the oranges, we're all in agreement on.
Let's go ahead and move to that slide.
When we get to the red, we all agree that this is something that the convention should vote on. We might vote for it, we might not personally, but we agree this is a serious issue and they should vote. Let them vote. Is that a fair way to put it?
I think that's accurate. Yeah. But to answer your question directly, the committee will not be making recommendations on yes or no on these. Rick gave you a little more nuance to say if it's on the omnibus resolution, we haven't heard a lot of contention about it. That's why we're proposing to pass them all en masse to save time at the convention, which we'll just explain right now. The others that are being pulled off the omnibus resolution have been pulled off for individual consideration, some of them by us, because we want you to discuss it. We are not of one mind necessarily on it. And so we're proposing them for discussion and ultimately for the convention to decide.
And let's move on to that now, if there are no other questions on it. The omnibus, so we sat there and go, how are we going to get this whole thing passed? What if people get caught up in little things and then, we get bogged down? I mean, we've only got so much time and nobody wants to, while we think it's all very interesting and we've spent months working on it, not everybody does, obviously. So we came up with the proposal of an omnibus, and this is not like unique to us or we're brilliant. Other organizations do this. But what we're going to do is basically include all the blue, all the green, almost all the orange. And then at the hearing, those where we got pushback, some of which we knew would be red, and we would be pulling them out of the omnibus already. But the idea is if there is any pushback by anybody on any of these things, we will pull them out and have them voted separately. Everything else will be voted on in one block. That's the omnibus. So that's all the greens and all the blues and all the things that we don't think will have. And so at least we can get those in. There won't be a lot of discussion. We'll make a lot of changes that are just going to clean up the document. And then each individual, possibly controversial issue will then be voted on separately. And if it passes, it goes back in, and if it comes out, if it doesn't pass. Is that clear? Did I do that good?
You did.
Okay.
So there are 15 resolutions. Resolution 1 is the collective resolution, the omnibus resolution. This is done at the General Convention by the use of a consent calendar. Our rules of order do not comprehend a consent calendar, and so we present resolution number 1, which is a consolidated resolution. And resolution number 1, as of this moment, consolidates 2, 3, 4, 7, 9, 10, 12, 13, and 14 of our 15 resolutions into a single resolution. So if you pass resolution 1, all of these are applied to the canons, and you can do it with one vote. And we're making that possible because these are the ones that we haven't heard any feedback, discussion, we haven't heard boo about these yet, except last night, resolution number 10 in Tallahassee, we heard feedback on, and hearing more feedback, it's likely we're already going to pull it off because you want to discuss it. You'll see why as we get to it tonight. But any resolution that you want to pull off the omnibus, you can do that in the same procedure for moving a resolution to the floor of convention, which is 2 delegations. 2 churches say together, we want that one off because we want that individually discussed. It comes off the consolidated resolution and we take it up individually. If you leave it on here, then we can pass all of these in block and do not have to spend time reading them, debating them on the floor of the convention. So we're trying to do this for efficiency of business, and so that you don't think we're up to anything, pull it off if you want to. I will talk about this all day, right? We love it. But if you want to get this done efficiently, the stuff that you're like, yeah, that's fine, leave it here, and we can, yeah, that's fine with resolution number 1. And that consolidates these all in block. We're going to talk about all of them. So here we go. Resolution 1 is the consolidated resolution. It contains these resolutions, but we're going to cover those too. On to number 2.
This resolution updates the canons by making minor corrections, working fixes, and ecclesiastical authority. So there's been some discussion about ecclesiastical authority, and that's something we went, and that's the direction that the national church is going.
Yes.
And we discussed it too, and that a lot of people really are attached to the word bishop, and they wanted the word bishop in there. But the reality is we've just spent 4 years with no bishop, and there are times, more often than we think. Like, think about it. How often in your life do they have those yard signs for campaigns? Actually, it's every 2 years. We got about 6 weeks where there's signs everywhere, and you go to the grocery store and there are 15,000 signs up there. It's more than you think. And that's sort of the same in terms of a bishop. So ecclesiastical authority covers everything, and it consolidates everything. Now, there are a few places where only the bishop can do those things, and in those places, it says bishop.
Yeah, in the proposed canons. This is the green resolution. Yeah. Resolution number 2 is the green resolution. So everything you see in the canon, in the proposed canonical revisions, if the color is green, it will be applied to the canons if you pass resolution number 2. We hope you read all of it, and we intend that you find the green resolutions are not significant changes. This is rewording, clarity, moving words around. This was trying to make the canons read better. That's the green resolution. We haven't heard any controversy about it yet. We don't anticipate it. That's resolution number 2. Questions on 2? Dark green and light green. So the difference between dark green and light green is all of those minor wording changes we were talking about. Light green is one thing and one thing only. Light green replaces the word bishop with the umbrella term ecclesiastical authority.
And sometimes it says bishop, bishop coadjutor, ecclesiastic standing committee, blah, da, 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 da. We're just like, let's clean all that up and just say ecclesiastical authority. It makes it much easier to read.
Yeah.
And clarity.
That is the only thing light green does. Anywhere you see light green, it is subsuming all of those iterations of bishop and other authorities and standing committee into the umbrella term ecclesiastical authority. That's all light green does anywhere in the document. Dark green is all of the grammatical and textual changes we're talking about, but we called this the green resolution because if it's green, it's in resolution number 2. Good, thank you for the question. Resolution number 3.
Blue.
This is the blue resolution, and this is more substantive wording refinements and minor procedural adjustments. If it's in blue in the revised document, it will be applied to the canons if you pass Resolution 3. If you need to talk about anything in blue, this is the resolution you want to either discuss or amend, because this is what applies the blue stuff. So we have the green resolution, the blue resolution, the orange resolution, which is resolution number 4, and then everything else is red. And those are by topic, because we thought those are the things that you might want to take up by topic. So this is the blue, resolution 3 is the blue resolution. Anyone have any questions or feedback about the blue resolution?
There's one other comment that we received at one of the meetings where somebody said, well, there are all these changes. Are we just supposed to trust you? And the answer is no. That's why we put it out there. So if you're reading something that's green, you're like, I don't think that's so green. Let us know. We'll change the color, right?
Yeah.
It's not, but this is what we're trying to do to make it easier for everybody.
Yes.
Yes, Lisa. Mother Lisa.
There we go. Under Canon 10, which is of the Standing Committee, Section 1,
Yes.
we remove the line, if there is no bishop, the Standing Committee shall be the ecclesiastical authority of the diocese.
Yes.
Is that because the national canons cover it?
And we have moved it into new Canon 1 in definitions.
Perfect. Thank you.
No problem. We pulled it out of that specific canon. It's in Canon 1 definitions and in the national canon. Thank you for that question. But that's why it's a minor revision, right? Because it's covered elsewhere, and we're not removing it or changing that structure at all. And so that is a helpful question because that's the sort of thing that would be blue, right? Yeah.
And if you'll notice, the definition section is all blue. We didn't have one before, and we found that a great idea.
Yeah.
Let's define things right off the bat.
The entirety of the new Canon 1 is blue, right? That's not an insubstantial change, but it's also not a controversial one unless you're talking about the definition of cure, and that's not all blue.
So within the definitions, there might be some cure is, of course, never-ending controversy.
All right, so resolution number 4 is the orange resolution. And the orange resolution, because if we listed everything that was green in the resolution, it would be a 20-page resolution. So that's why we referred back to the document. If we listed everything in blue, it too would be a 20-page resolution. That's why we refer you back to the master document. The items in orange are enumerated in Resolution 4, and these are the items in orange. One is that the definition of cure is moved to the new Canon 1, so that move is something that moves cure, and there's the use of cure elsewhere in the document that needed to be changed. You'll find that cure-related change is in orange. So if you find where cure used to be in the document, it's orange because it's been consolidated. Of the Diocesan Council, Section 13 is moved into Canon 12 of committees of the diocese regarding the establishment of the Common Ministry Budget Committee. You saw that in the example of Canon 12 earlier. We consolidated all of the canonical committees under one canon. That's an orange change. The Florida Canon 23 is merged and expanded under Commission on Ministry. I mentioned that earlier. We have more than just lay readers, so that old canon has been removed. It was Canon 23. It's been moved into Commission on Ministry and expanded to cover all of the lay licensure that the Bishops' Institute is now doing. And then finally, 2025 Canon 20 is consolidated with 2026 Canon 17 on the organization and admission of congregations. And this is the biggest part of the orange resolution. And that is, we had one massive canon for the creation of a mission and one massive canon for the creation of a parish. And most of it was duplicate. And so what we did was merged the language, preserved what would be there in duplicate, and made it in such a way where both of the canons can read together. That too is an orange change. Those are all of the orange changes. And so you see that in Resolution 4, the orange resolution. If you pass Resolution 4, everything in orange in the proposed canons will be applied to the canons.
And if you don't like one of the orange ones, let us know, and we can pull it out of the omnibus so it's not in the orange, and it can be voted on individually.
Right. That means you can amend it, you can defeat it. If you want to do anything other than pass it with the rest of the omnibus, pull off Resolution 4, and we can talk about the orange stuff separately. That's how we envision the procedure going, and how we invite you to participate in revising our canons. Any questions on the orange resolution?
I would say that my sense as an editor is blue, green, and orange are all editing changes. In most of the oranges, we're moving things and we're consolidating and we're putting them in the place. We're not making substantive changes to the way we operate. It's just moving things around.
Yeah, I bring up the Commission on Ministry piece because we are expanding the lay licensures that are available to match the national canon and to match the reality of what the Bishops' Institute is already doing. That is an expansion of the canon under the orange resolution, to be transparent. On to the stuff that you really want to talk about.
Yep.
The red resolutions. Resolution 5 is a red resolution. This is not part of the omnibus resolution because this changes the definition of cure. For those of you who are clergy, you may be really interested in this. For those of you who are not clergy, you may be thinking, what in the world are we talking about? Very briefly, cure is how clergy who are not canonically resident in the Diocese of Florida are qualified as delegates to the convention. So we have an army of retired clergy who help out in the Diocese of Florida. And either for reasons of their own or for reasons of our own, not all retired clergy are canonically resident in the diocese. And it has historically been a value of the Diocese of Florida that we still want to allow those people to participate in convention. Cure is how we accomplish that. And because we had a bishop's election where participation in the election was a matter of controversy, we have been working on defining cure in such a way that it can be objectively applied to clergy. And that's what this resolution does. It tweaks the objective application of the word cure to clergy, and it changes it in the following ways. And this has expanded since our hearing. Because those of you who are on the hearing know that we created a cure working group via email after that resolution, and those folks and I had conversation. The committee reviewed those suggestions, and in the live document, as we were talking about earlier, you can find our current proposal for cure, and it changes the existing definition of cure in the following ways. Supply priests who celebrate 12 Eucharists a year will now have cure. The 12 Eucharists a year that a priest participates in, they must be vested. And so it's vest and participate in 12 Eucharists per year. So you can't attend a Eucharist and count that as participation. We're looking for people who are serving the diocese as clergy. So the participation in the Eucharist is vested, and the establishment of those 12 Eucharists must be on a report that's turned into the diocese. You can't call us when you're registering for a convention and say, yeah, I did 12 Eucharists. It has to be documented, and documented in the way that clergy are required to document our activities across the course of the year. So that is the current proposal for the revisions to cure, and I already see a hand in the back. This is number 5. This is not on the omnibus resolution. We will take this up individually as a resolution at convention. Joe.
I just want to point out that the QR code takes you to the resolution, but it is not updated, and I just want to make sure the committee is aware, because it doesn't say vest.
We are, and Robin is working on that. If you go to the live document, the live version of the canons, look in Canon 1, where is the location of the new definition of cure. You will find it the way that we are proposing it. Quite simply, the committee has access to the live document. We do not have access to the website. So we have made our communications team aware of the change that needs to be made. We have changed the live document. They're working on changing the website. Thank you for pointing that out. Lisa.
Just a point of clarification. You had mentioned retired clergy, but this also applies to clergy maybe that come in as a part-time or full-time associate from a different diocese and then are licensed by the ecclesiastical authority to serve in the diocese.
Thank you. As a member of our ecclesiastical authority who's dealing with this every day.
We've discussed this for 3 years, and the lay perspective on this is we want only and every clergy member that is playing an active role in our diocese. And so somebody pointed out supply priests aren't included, and that's wrong. If supply priests are there 12 times a year, once a month, and we tweaked what the priests came up with, and because they said lead, we're like, wait a minute, do you have to be the celebrant? What if you're participating?
Preaching.
And we're like, well, if you vest, that's good enough for us. But, right? So, but we want everybody to have the right to see, voice, and vote who is doing something.
Yes.
And that's who we want to be making decisions, because voting is a decision-making. They're a decision-maker.
All right, so any other questions on Resolution 5? It pertains to the definition of cure in the new Canon 1 in the proposed 2026 canons. Resolution 6. Oh, I'm sorry.
Hands.
Why would you want retired people voting anyway?
If they're playing a role, then they're not really retired.
Yeah, so the very short version is one of the great gifts we have as the Diocese of Florida, where a goodly number of Episcopal clergy come to retire on our beautiful warm beaches, is that those retired clergy are also still playing an active role here. They may be retired from the Diocese of Oklahoma, but they're here serving often as interim clergy in our parishes, supply clergy in our parishes, or frankly, long-term part-time clergy in our parishes. So they still play an active role despite the fact that their status is retired. And so we were looking for a way where clergy who still play an active role in the life of the diocese have a role in our convention despite the fact that they are retired and their canonical residence is elsewhere. Does that help?
This does not address, though, anybody who's canonically resident and completely retired. They do have a voice, seat, and vote. And that's just the way it's been. And we talked about changing that and got this a couple years ago. Got a lot of pushback.
Retired people, when the bishop has control over people. He has no control over the retired people, because if they give him a hard time, they'll just go ahead and retire out of their way. So they have a say in what the working priests that are here full time. They have a say in that, and it just don't seem right that they should.
I don't think, this doesn't define canonically resident, does it? Our document doesn't, that's defined by the bishop or decided by the bishop?
Yeah, so canonical residence is from the larger,
we
from
have
the National
talked
Church
about
canons.
bringing that up as well and creating that in the future. But we figured we'd bitten off a big enough piece of steak this time. We'll probably
So to give a very concise answer to your question, yes, I understand that that's a concern. This doesn't address that problem. Someone who is not active in the life of the diocese and still gets a say in the life of the diocese are retired, inactive, canonically resident clergy, and cure has no effect on them. Keith looks like he can weigh in on that.
Wait.
Yeah, we want you on the recording.
We want you on the record, mister.
turn on my own, I'm sorry. Thank you, honey. I just want to be clear that canonically resident clergy who don't satisfy the cure requirement must register to vote.
Right, that's right.
Register
That is
in
one
advance.
thing that we
They have the
didn't clear.
right to vote, but they must register to vote if they are what one might consider fully retired.
Yes. So they still have to take some positive action towards coming to convention and being a decision maker.
Well, and to further answer the question, if you want to change that, that has to be changed through the general convention because this is defined in the canons of the Episcopal Church. And so there's a degree to which we absolutely can change that, but not through this mechanism. Do you see what I'm saying? That's something that's guaranteed at a higher level in the documents.
Why don't the higher church make the rules about what cure would be? Why are we making rules? Why are we making rules for what the national church needs to make a decision on?
Because we have the purview to expand participation in our convention. I'm trying to think of another practical example. As a diocese, we can allow more than the minimum to participate, but we cannot allow less than the minimum to participate. Does that help? Yeah. So what we're doing with CURE is allowing additional clergy than the minimum requirements of the national canons to participate in our convention. And that's something we can do. The canons do not prohibit us from doing that, but we can't allow less than the minimum because the canons do prohibit us from doing that.
What we can control is the definition of cure.
Right.
And if you're going to have cure, you're going to be working. You're going to be around. You're going to be dealing with parishioners, helping the poor, whatever your ministry is. You're going to be active. And that's something we can control, and that's what's in 5.
Anything else on cure? Resolution 6. You've seen this before. Resolution 6 is a red resolution and will repeal the ability to participate in the convention as a delegate electronically. So this got confused in our hearing, and so we want to clarify that confusion now. This has nothing to do with electronic voting. Electronic voting is the best thing since sliced bread. We're going to do that as long as we can possibly enable it. Electronic voting will continue. This is something we did in the midst of a global pandemic to guarantee that we had a quorum for a bishop's election. And we proposed to repeal it last year. This was the resolution that passed by simple majority but needed 2/3. And this is the ability for someone to participate as a delegate to the convention electronically. And for a few reasons, we've proposed it. And that is one, if you've been on the floor of the convention the last couple of years, you have seen how difficult it is to enable that digital remote participation in the convention. I can tell you that there is significant expense in staff and dollars that are required to enable that participation. And I said it in Tallahassee, I'll say it here, as a point of personal opinion. I'm editorializing here. If you're going to try to rebuild the unity of a diocese, it really helps if you're actually together. And so the committee feels strongly that part of that active participation in the convention of the diocese means you have to be with us. And we mean physically. And we have seen some of the conversations online about disability and inability, and we want to invite those people who are concerned about that to get into conversation with staff and figure out ways in which we can enable that in-person participation, even if it's isolation, even if it's in a way that allows them to participate as fully as they can and being present for the convention. I see 2 hands. Joe had his up first. So this seeks to...
Yeah, I'm wondering if the committee considered making it optional for the ecclesiastical authority rather than, right now, the way we wrote it a few years ago is that it is required that we offer that. And this says it is required that we not offer that. And I wonder if there's a middle ground that says the ecclesiastical authority, who has the option to look at the budget and to look at the need, has the option but not the necessity to offer an online option.
What the resolution actually does is just remove it from the canons. It's no longer mandated. We actually did it 2 years ago when there was a pandemic. Right. And you may recall it generated some heat, but
We did it 4 years ago as well. The 2020 convention was entirely online. There were 0 people in person for that. 2021
But this repeals the mandate in the canons.
I'm sorry, Joe, you were saying? Yes, yes. Yes. Because
Let's get him a mic. He's
well,
putting things that need to
I'll
be
repeat
put
it.
online.
He said they can all interact online if you have a fully online convention, which is also the prevailing wisdom if you're going to do, especially if you're going to do elections. You either are all electronic or you are all in person, which is how we ought to respond to a global pandemic, right? We ought to have an all electronic convention when we can't gather in person. And when we can gather in person, we ought to gather in person. That's the proposal of the committee. And yes, I appreciate that suggestion. It is something you can amend. This is not part of the omnibus resolution because there's been so much discussion about it. So Resolution 6 will be taken up separately from all the other resolutions, and that's something that could be brought.
And
Yes.
just to be clear, we're not saying you can't do Zoom. We're just taking this out of the, as it's written, which mandates that we have to make Zoom access, and we have to allow people to appear by Zoom. And we're just taking it and saying it's out. That doesn't mean we couldn't amend it next year, change it, add things. It doesn't mean that the diocesan council couldn't say, and the ecclesiastical authorities say, we've got another pandemic, we're going to have to do it. That would be my reading of it.
Okay, so that was my first question. Is there anything else in the document that is controlling to where, so we passed this year. Next September, when we have a diocesan convention, a plague of locusts descends, and we cannot make it to Camp Weed. Could the ecclesiastical authority make the choice to have a Zoom election?
So now the lawyer in me is talking, okay? One, we've got historical precedents for that several times. 2, I don't see anything that prohibits it.
Okay.
The reason I was brought on this committee was 2 things. One is we had a huge hemorrhage over whether we had a quorum or not. So we had two things that we were tasked with doing. One is, what is quorum like in all the other dioceses? And it turns out we had one of the most egregious or restrictive quorums of any diocese we found. So we reduced that, and that passed. And in some ways, that eliminated the need for the Zoom, because we had questions about, can we do Zoom or not? Now, we've done it twice or 3 times,
Yep.
but at least twice without this in, now it's required. I would say, yes, if we have another emergency, we can do it. But what we could do is rewrite the canon and make it so that it's possible. But we really think that the thing needs to be voted on now. Let's decide whether, let's take it out of the canons and we can adjust it if we want. Because there is that other question about, do we want to gather all together? And being present is an important part of being together, if it's, medically possible.
I'm a fan of the removal and not having to amend or rewrite or anything like that, as long as the ecclesiastical authority can use, hopefully, common sense and looking at the budget and figure out whether it's feasible depending on what's going on in the world. And so I don't have a problem with that. I do have a question about one of the things that we're talking about doing is, looking at other dioceses, seeing how they're doing it, looking at we say the national church, but they're really international, so the Episcopal Church, and looking at how they're doing it on the larger scale. We have General Convention every 3 years. People come from all over the world for this General Convention. Do they offer a hybrid option, or do you have to be in person?
For the General Convention, you have to be there. There isn't, You can watch live. They stream it like a television show where you can watch what's going on in the House of Bishops and the House of Deputies for the sake of transparency. But to have seat, voice, or vote, you have to be in the room and credentialed, right? You have to be wearing your badge to participate in the General Convention.
Another reason that the committee is looking at, let's consolidate and try to work in harmony with what the national church is doing and make our canons do that. I mean, that's one of the biggest reasons to vote with the omnibus, because it just brings us in line with where the national church is.
And there was a lot we needed to do to accomplish that. Resolution 6. Are you ready for 6?
That's 6. 7.
Resolution 7. Sweet. Halfway there.
Updates the canons by removing assistant officer roles.
Yeah, so resolution...
We didn't get any pushback on that, did we?
Resolution 7 is on the omnibus resolution because we haven't heard any controversy about this. There were 2 canonically established roles of assistant secretaries to the diocesan convention and assistant treasurers to the diocesan convention that were created by canon. The committee's opinion is that the treasurer nor the secretary of the diocese need canonical permission for people to help them. And so we are eliminating this as unnecessary levels of governance that do not need to be in our canonical documents.
We really felt that was kind of getting into policy and telling the treasurer what to do, and that we don't need to do that.
So this strikes the named positions for assistant treasurers and assistant secretaries. That is all it does. That's why it remains on the omnibus. So let us know if you wanted to discuss that, but we considered that non-controversial.
Number 8, we are changing or proposing a change to the selection of the diocesan council, to the disciplinary board, and there's one other, right?
It's all down at the bottom of this resolution slide. So 5 lay...
And deputies to general convention.
Yep.
That those people be selected by the casting of lots.
Yeah, so sortition is the fancy legal word that the attorneys came up with for drawing the name out of a hat.
Yes.
And this comes from feedback that we've gotten about winners and losers in elections. This comes from feedback we've gotten about electioneering and politicking as it pertains to diocesan election. It also comes from feedback we've gotten about concentrations of delegates and concentrations of preference for the convention, both for regional representation and diocesan-wide representation. And so the idea would be that there is a nominating committee that has a set of qualifications and requirements to perform these roles, that everyone who's put up for the role is pre-qualified as someone who is qualified and capable of performing those roles. They would be put up as a slate of people under consideration, and then when we got to the diocesan convention, they would be presented as the people eligible for selection. We would say a prayer, we would put all of their names in a hat, and we would draw one out. This was brought up to the Charter and Canons Committee, and we said, whoa, really? And then as we went around the table, people were like, well, that's how we select our delegates and our vestry members at my church. And someone else said, well, yeah, that's how we select them at my church too. And then I said, yeah, that's how we select them at my church too. And then we decided to propose it.
If it sounds familiar, it's from the book of Acts. It's how Matthias became the 12th apostle.
When they needed to replace Judas.
The reason that I am really in favor of this is it requires us to have faith in God, that it takes out all of our earthly concerns and fears and notions about power, and it hands it over and lets the Holy Spirit, which is what in the book of Acts is talked about. The Holy Spirit came down and selected Matthias. And I'm happy to say my All Saints delegation is here in full, and I can tell you that the 3 delegates here that are lay people were all selected by sortition. My entire time on the vestry, every time, was by sortition. And so it's worked, but really, I've had questions, people say, well, are we trying to get politics out of it? Are we trying to do this? And it's like, I don't really think it's any of that. I think we are going to take the misery that we've had for the last 3 years, and we're going to be an example. We're going to be a light for the national church. And we're going to put our faith, like we say every Sunday, in Jesus to pick the person that's going to be on the diocesan council. And we'll have the standing committee who are all elected, and they will be either the nominating / qualifying committee, or they will select a committee. And then those people will make sure that we've got qualified people. And then we hand it over to God and he decides. Yes, question?
Yep, honey.
So I think you just answered most of my question, which was, so the standing committee will be elected, and
Yes.
they will be the one that selects the, I guess, nominating committee.
And sets the criteria for qualification and what it takes to do the job.
Okay.
Which is in there, I think, right?
Yeah, it's at the bottom of the resolution.
Well, and I know I brought this up at the hearing because I don't think we had discussed that at
Yeah.
length. But my concern is that we also at St. Andrews select our vestry members and our delegates out of a hat. And we can do that because the vestry who has to work with these vestry members are the ones that are vetting whose name goes into the hat. So they've got a real interest in picking folks that can work well together. And also, we kind of operate in a high trust environment. We've been together for a while. We love each other a lot. We have a lot of trust. We've built a lot of rapport with each other. And right now, we are currently in the middle of a transition. We are in a low trust environment. We have had issues with people abusing authority. And not St. Andrews, we the church, we the diocese. And I fear that on a diocesan level, you'd have more people claiming abuses of power or, standing committee just picking their buddies and all that kind of stuff. This might be something in the future that we could move toward, but I think we have some trust building to do before we get there.
Okay.
So let's be clear, we're not asking you to trust each other. We're asking you to trust God. And that he'll pick people who we can work with. It's kind of a radical love thing, but that's who we are as Episcopalians, as the body of Christ. So I get it. There's a lot of distrust. And one of the things that our committee came up with is, one of the things, we all got together when we're all walked into the room kind of like this. And gradually we've worked together. And I would say our committee gets along great, and we have all kinds of diversity, and that never comes up. We've built trust with each other. And one of the things that we're in favor of this is we've got the sense that we got to trust God. And this will require a lot of faith by the people in our diocese to just hand it over and let God pick the names out of the hat. And never mind the fact that we do this at the parish level all over the place. But that is what
11.3F is the specific reference for the standing committee setting the requirements. Tanya, Catherine has her hand up.
Let me just read while she's getting the microphone. The language, the standing committee shall establish a procedure for selection by sortition for the diocesan council and publish it no later than 90 days prior to diocesan convention.
For the sake of timing, aren't we just discussing, do we understand what's being proposed? Because, points for and against can come up at convention, right?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay, so this is just, do we understand this?
Yeah, well, yes and.
And?
Our hope, and I know that may turn this into a hostage situation, but our hope, too, is that we're soliciting feedback as the Charter and Canons Committee because these resolutions ultimately come from us. We have the opportunity to continue to shape them based on your feedback. We want to present something you want. And so that's part of the reason we're soliciting feedback. You don't necessarily have to give it now in this way, but we want it in advance of the convention so that we're avoiding the floor fight on the day. That's why we held a hearing. That's why we're going over this in more detail in the pre-convention meetings, because we'd like to do the work up front and not have to explain these things on the floor of convention. We are canonically required to have pre-convention meetings. These are being recorded for people who can't be here. We want to give you as much information and have the discussion as much as possible before we get to convention. We're aiming at highly effective, low drama diocesan conventions. Highly productive, low drama diocesan conventions. Chris.
I think my concern with this, the way it is that a parish could stack. If a particular large parish, which I'm from, had a large pool of pre-qualified candidates that met the qualifications, if it's drawing names out of a hat, if half the names in the hat are from one parish, so has there been any discussion, to keep it to Catherine's point, has there been any discussion about how would we ensure that the pool is representative of the entire diocese?
So my answer is that we would trust the standing committee and nominating committee to say 15 is too many, y'all. You can't have 15 people from one parish. And there'd be another thing about when we talk about trust. If you're putting 15 people up from a single parish, it's sort of obvious what you're trying to do. And the canons are not going to take the humanity out of humans. And so there will be a degree to which malicious actors will attempt to game whatever system you design. And so that was part of our discussion on the committee. At some point, it should become obvious how the system is trying to be manipulated. And then the canons are easy to change. Fix it. We'll fix it when those things happen. Ideally, we don't have to fix it in those ways, but if we have to, we have to.
That's why our committee meets every year.
And every week, right now.
Right now, yeah.
So, this is a red resolution because, one, we're not of one mind of how you do it, and we want you to consider that we do it. And you'll be given the opportunity to make the decision.
And the way it's written right now, the standing committee is going to make those rules. And let's say it passes, we'll do it next year and see how it goes. And then our committee may get back together and say, okay, one from each region. There are a whole host of ways we could do it.
And thank you for pointing that out, Rick. This does not apply to this year's elections.
Right.
This year's elections, even if we pass the canon in advance, and we'll talk to Keith and make sure where this is on the agenda, because canonical revision in the Diocese of Florida takes effect immediately. If we're going to take up resolutions before we take up elections, we will add a line to this resolution that it commences with the 184th Convention of the Diocese of Florida, because our nominating process this year did not take this into account. We will elect this year, even if this canon passes before the elections. So fear not. We're not trying to change it this year. Number 9. Are we ready for 9?
Yes.
Almost
Unless,
there.
any other questions? Everyone getting tired? It's now 8 o'clock.
9 is on the omnibus resolution, and it is a single line in the canons that requires the treasurer to be bonded. This requirement, as was pointed out in our hearing, is already covered by the national canons. Our requirements for how our treasurer gets covered are larger than simple bonding and is covered in our insurance policies. This is an old line of the canon that we sought to remove. However, it does talk about bonding the treasurer, and that is why it's red. But it proposes to strike that single line with the understanding that it's already covered by national canon and by our insurance policies.
It's also our understanding is that the industry has moved on from this. This is sort of an archaic requirement, but
You need more than that.
we don't do this stuff, so that's our understanding.
You need more
If
than that.
anyone knows otherwise, let us know.
Yeah. Questions on number 9?
Yes.
Previously, you asked about assistance, helping other people.
Yes.
You know, like a treasurer.
Yes.
Would the assistant need to be bonded for that case?
The no is the answer to that question, and that neither exists under current canon nor under the revised canon. And I cannot answer the question about the degree to which those who are assisting the treasurer would be covered under insurance. I'm not a lawyer nor an insurance person, but whatever state assistant treasurers were in before these changes is the same state that assistant treasurers are in after these changes.
Yeah, but if the treasurer has to be bonded, the person that's assisting him could do things that the treasurer wouldn't want him to do.
I agree.
Any other questions or clarifications by somebody who knows about the bonding? Our understanding is the industry has moved on from this, and it doesn't really, it's kind of an archaic thing.
Resolution 10. Resolution 10 is the one that I said last night. There was a question about it from the Tallahassee pre-convention meeting. This strikes the requirement that the chair of the standing committee be a priest. So we have 6 members of the standing committee at present, 3 who are clergy, 3 who are laity. The chair is only permitted to be a priest. This would allow a layperson to be elected by the standing committee who elects their own president. It would allow the standing committee to elect either a cleric or a layperson as the president of the standing committee. That's what it does. Joe. This is currently on the omnibus resolution, but it looks like this is the second pre-convention meeting where we're going to have comments on it. So it may be something we take up.
Or clarification. Let's see what he has to say.
Yes, me again. I would like for this to be removed from the omnibus resolution. I think it's a great idea that the standing committee can have whoever they want be the president in normal times. But clergy are set apart for many things, but governance is one of them. And when the standing committee is the ecclesiastical authority, I feel like it's more appropriate to our polity that a priest be the president. And I would at least like the convention to make that decision. And I'd be willing to put forward an amendment that states that, such a time as the standing committee is the ecclesiastical authority, the president or chair would be a priest. But I would at least like for the convention to have that conversation.
Okay. Others? Okay, that's resolution 10 that you may see off the omnibus. Well, you will, the Charter and Canons Committee will have to decide.
Well, Father Joe, if we made the amendment you suggested, would you be okay with it?
Well, I would, but yes, but that's how I would vote for it. I think that there's some may want that across the board, so for laity to have that opportunity, so that would be, I just think it's something the convention should.
Right.
You want it off the omnibus no matter what? Well, that's perfectly fine.
That's not what I heard. What I heard is if you changed it in the way that he wants, leave it on the omnibus.
Well, that's what I asked him, and he said no.
No, he said that's the way he would want.
What did you say? You tell us, because we heard your words, and we came up with different conclusions.
I guess what I was trying to say is if it's on the omnibus amended, as I said, I would vote in favor of it. However, I still think the convention ought to have the chance to discuss it.
Okay.
So off the omnibus.
Yes, okay, that's what I thought you said.
Are we ready for
11.
Resolution 11?
11.
We
Some of
only-
these we thought might be controversial, and some haven't been, and others are more than we thought. Now, this one we kind of saw coming.
This is a change to the diocesan council. So regional canons are 5 positions on the diocesan council that are appointed by the ecclesiastical authority, who serve in multiple ways, in that they are conveners for their regions. They help the bishop give pastoral care to the clergy of the region. They are disaster coordinators in cases where disasters strike the diocese, and they are also members of the diocesan council. And so there are several layers to what regional canons do. Something that we considered in the council, or something that we considered on the committee, is that the bishop appoints the 5 regional canons, and the bishop themselves sits on the diocesan council. There are 12 members of the diocesan council. 6 votes of the diocesan council are under direct control of the bishop. So we considered, as a governance change, having the regions elect the canons, so that then the convention or the subregions of the diocese select their clergy representation to the council the way that they select their lay representation to the council. The counter argument that we heard was that the regional canons also have all of these other responsibilities as pastoral care, as communicators, as conveners of the clergy, and thus there is value to the bishop having the ability to select whomever they would want to have those responsibilities as well. The compromise that the committee came to was that we want to preserve that in allowing the bishop to select the regional canons, but we would like less of a heavy hand in governance on the council by then having the regional canons have an advisory role to the council and not a voting role on the council. So that is the essence of Resolution 11. It adds one word to the canons, and that is regional canons have seat, voice, and no vote on diocesan council.
So one of the things that I wanted us to do this year, speaks to most profoundly, and that is, this is a year, and of course, by the time we're talking and people are voting on this, we'll have a new bishop, hopefully, and we'll know who that is, and we'll already be thinking about the new bishop. But this is a decision about how strong do we want our bishop. It's political theory, by him having direct appointment power over the regional canons. Then, if you have a very strong-willed bishop, it can put pressure on them to vote the way he wants to run the diocesan council. If you take their vote away, then that's muted. They obviously will do, what their other duties are. But the voting power is diminished. So it weakens our bishop. And it strengthens the diocesan council, both clergy and laity. So it's sort of like the Magna Carta.
Right, in that respect.
But there are things to think about as a diocese, that there are advantages at having a powerful bishop, that things get done, right? Things can get done. There are disadvantages to having a powerful bishop as well. And the one thing we know is the last bishop is not going to be the new bishop. And so no matter what you thought about him, try not to let that affect what you think about this decision. Because the new bishop is a new person, and they may be laissez-faire about things, or they may be, aggressive. We just don't know. But structurally, this will make a weaker bishop. The bishop will have to persuade more people to vote his way, to do things that he wants them to do.
Questions?
Is that fair?
I think that's fair. Yeah.
This is one of those where we're just throwing it out there and letting y'all decide.
Well, this is the compromise that we came to. That's why I mentioned the other ways we looked at doing it, because we've gotten lots of questions about why this way, why this thing. That's why this thing this way. And so we propose it for your consideration.
I'll give another example. So when I was young and studied all this stuff, we had a traditionally weak governor. And when I studied Southern politics, there were certain states like Virginia had a very powerful governor, and the governor did everything. And in Florida, back in those days, you had their entire cabinet was elected on their own. So they had their own little, groups that they had to respond to, like agricultural commission or whatever. They had the farm people and, seeds and all that. That was their little, and they responded to them, and they voted on things the governor wanted to do. The governor says, I want to do this to move the state forward. Well, not if the agricultural commissioner didn't like it, because the farmers were complaining. So it weakened him traditionally. And it's sort of the same, obviously in a much smaller way. But that's the kind of structural discussion that we're trying to throw out there for you guys to have. Does anyone have questions or comments?
This is not on the omnibus. You will see this on the floor of the convention.
Definitely not an omnibus. This is a huge structural change that we're proposing.
Resolution 12. Resolution 12 makes the diocesan council responsible for all compensation decisions in the diocese, including the bishop, under the current canons. The diocesan convention provides for the bishop's compensation and at his election, and then the chair of the Finance and Investment Committee and the vice chair of the diocesan council are the only two people who look at the bishop's compensation thereafter. So the convention sets it, and then two people are the only people who review it from then on. This is a flaw in our system. And so this resolution puts the bishop's compensation along with all other diocesan compensation under the supervision of the diocesan council. It eliminates that one section pertaining to the bishop's compensation.
Any questions?
Yes, this is on the omnibus. So this will not be taken up separately.
We did not think this would be controversial. It makes
Unless you
common
change it.
sense to let the diocesan council make.
Resolution 13, also on the omnibus, clarifies the specific roles and authority of the standing committee regarding diocesan property. This does change our governance because heretofore the secretary of the diocese and members of diocesan council, specifically the vice chair, was permitted to alienate diocesan property, execute deeds and mortgages under our canons. By the canons of the Episcopal Church, that authority is reserved to the standing committees, and this change brings our canons in alignment with the national church canons about the responsibilities of the standing committee. It too is on the omnibus.
And this is a little cleaner than the others, because now we're actually conflicting with the national church the way we do it now.
Yes.
So it's very clear real estate and property goes under the standing committee. And so we're just cleaning that up.
Resolution 14, this is the last one, unless you have anything on 13. Resolution 14, along the lines of the other layers of governance that are mandated by canon, but that can be, but do not have to be. The Architectural Review Board and the School Board and Board of Governors are two layers of governance that are required by our canons, but have not been canonically constituted over the years. And so what we decided to do was remove the canonical requirement that those things have to exist and allow the diocesan council, if those things need to exist, diocesan council has the power to create new committees, should those committees need to exist. Right now, they're required by canon, and we're not doing it. So we decided to not require it by canon so that we don't have to do it, and we're not doing it. And if we want to do it, Council is empowered to make it happen.
Canon 12 does a lot of work
This is,
with
yeah.
the creation of committees. And unless there are very specific fundamental needs to have these committees, we're not going to mandate diocesan council create that.
And so 14 removes those two committees as canonically required. That's what those do. It strikes two full canons from the old ones, which is, the size and how they're selected and how long they serve and all of that. It eliminates those named committees from the canons, and then if council wants them, we can bring them back.
But they can be recreated at the next diocesan council meetings. I mean, it says, let's create chairs and do it, and it's right back. It's just, again, it's like that other one. We're taking it out of the canons, letting the diocesan council do their job.
Questions on that? That's the last resolution we have to consider this evening. The omnibus resolution. This is on the omnibus resolution. Yes, that's correct. So this is number 14. It is a red resolution because it does change our governance, but it has thus far been non-controversial, so it remains on the omnibus resolution.
Generated zero heat in our group, so.
Now, are there any questions at all about canonical revision? You did it.
When can we go home? Right?
We're there.
Thank you, guys. First of all, this is really going to sound like a funny question. I thought I am? Oh, I'm not. Yes, I am. Oh, here you are. Thank you. This is going to sound like a funny question, and I don't mean it that way, but I want us to be dismissed by the right person. Is there a deacon in the house that I'm not identifying? I don't see one. So in just a moment, Mother Lisa, quick prep. As the standing committee member present, I'm going to be asking you to dismiss us. So fair deal. So let's go back one quick slide. There. Does anybody have any questions that you've not gotten answered otherwise during the evening? I can't help you with meaning of life. Actually, I can. You've got Jesus. But anyway, any other questions that you didn't get answered? Okay. Having said that, Hania, please do go on where you'd gone. Please, 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 if you're not already getting diocesan communications, please, if you are on Facebook or Instagram, please be on with us too, because particularly anything that we push out through email, we're going to push it out through social media as well. We also push out some additional social media items from time to time, but the main communication vehicle is email, but a lot of folks don't see it as readily as they do social media. So if you're a social media person, please make sure, because one thing, actually I've gotten 2 or 3 comments just this week of emails going into spam filters irregularly. One of our delegates from Appalachia told me today that for some reason her spam filter filters out some of our emails but not others. So just in case that's happening to you, please do use social media with us as well. And then lastly, one of the most important things we try to do, we really don't mean to barrage you with emails. We do try to collect as much as we can on a monthly basis and put it in a Diocesan Digest format so that there's a lot of meat in there. There's a lot of interesting news of things going on in different congregations around the diocese. Father Douglas's Bishop's Institute is always linked there now, so that if you're not on his mailing list, but you might still see something you're interested in reading. So the Diocesan Digest comes out monthly, usually on the last day of the month, usually pretty close to the last day of the month. So those are 3 ways to stay in touch with us. The Diocesan Digest link will also get you on the email list if you're not already. So please stay in touch with us. The last thing I have to do is to remind you of when convention is and where it is. And again, come with your really fully charged personal communication device, because that's how you will vote. And with that, Mother Lisa, would you dismiss us? Thank you all so